morning, everybody. The ones who are in Finland, the ones who are in the other side of the world, good afternoon. Welcome everybody to our Boardman Grow event. It's called What's Up APAC. So this is actually a series of events we've been organizing, I think, last 5 years or so. We have covered regions from US to DACH region, or Nordics at least, what I know. And the idea is actually to provide some examples, give a valuable information, and of course, share the experiences from the different parts of the world with the like-minded people. So people who have been there or done some business. So that's the way to work it. And the idea is, of course, to encourage all the growth entrepreneurs and alikes to take actually the big leap, and of course opening a new market, or just provide current information about what's happening in that part of the world. And that's basically the main idea. My name is Samppa Vilkuna. I'm a founder of Superson, and Superson is actually helping growth companies in their marketing communications all around the world. We have offices in Helsinki, we have office in Amsterdam and in Singapore. And yes, that's probably the reason why I'm here today. Today we have a tight 90 minutes about the APAC region. We have 3 superb guests with us. But before going into the actual guests, I would like to also remind you that one of the Boardman Grow's main idea is to meet with like-minded people. And as we have now today here, many people who are interested about the APAC region, they probably already have some experience. Just look what to do there. So please share your LinkedIn profile here in the chat so you can link with the others. I'll try to do the example here. So that way you can link with each other and then continue to chat with the like-minded people. But hey, further ado, first on the row, we have Mr. Pekka Laitinen from Business Finland, who has an extensive background from that region. And he's actually an international business coach and a market entry expert, and having worked extensively in Southeast Asia and Japan and even in Russia. Currently, he leads an expert team helping Finnish companies in one of the fastest growing areas in the world. So we'll hear exciting story from Pekka. So welcome.
Thanks, Samppa, and good morning, everybody. And I'm really excited to be here and present you as Samppa said, the fastest growing region in the world at the moment. APAC is of course a huge area, and I took the liberty to limit the presentation to 2 most exciting areas actually in this region at the moment, which are Southeast Asia and Australia. I'll actually first go to the reasons to open you why this is so exciting at the moment and why you should really have a deep look at this. Then I'll tell you, using 2 examples, how Business Finland can help you to get into these markets. These are examples that are from the real world, and let's see whether I manage to get you as excited as we are. But if we start now with the reasons why this is so big. And first of all, Southeast Asia. We normally nowadays talk about SEA 6, which are the 6th largest and most obvious candidates for the companies to be present in this area. So we have 660 million consumers in this Southeast Asia region, and we have a very young population pyramid. This is the 5th largest economy actually in the world, and moreover, it's growing about 5 growth this year and the years ahead, according to many economic forecasts. And it is rightly defined as a top global opportunity. As an example of how this works in real world, last year, 2023, there were more investments into Southeast Asia than to China. And we are very close to a time when this area is actually also growing faster than China. So you really should have a close look at the opportunities in region. Australia, there are the economic figures on the screen, but beyond the figures, this is actually the most Nordic country probably anywhere in the world outside Nordic countries, which means that it's pretty easy place to get going. Don't get misled by the distances. It is really on the other side of the world, but it is also a very good area for the Finnish companies who have digital services. So meaning that it is on your laptop in many ways. It is good to show the size of these economies, and I have here some balloons that show these countries in comparison. Of course, Australia is the biggest on the right, the size of the economy. Indonesia is the red and white above it, so growing also very fast, and it's a home to 280 million people at the moment. So nearly half of the whole Southeast Asia lives in this country, and the fastest growing country at the moment on the left is the Philippines. So we have a very attractive table here ready for you. The right side you have some symbols. The topmost shows that these domestic markets are growing, the middle classes are growing fast. They want better services, they want better infrastructure, they want more consumer goods. The arrows in the middle show that this is relatively free and very free what comes to Singapore, Australia, for example, an area that is so-called open economy. So there you can operate quite a high degree of freedom there. And the age pyramid. In the Southeast Asia, the average age is still less than 30 years, and there are countries like Philippines where the average age is still 25. Of course, there are two countries that are more similar than our countries, like Singapore, but it's an extremely rich country at the moment, very high level of demand for health and elderly care related services. And then Australia, of course, benefits from the very good immigration policies, so they get all the time new people into the country. But then I'll go straight to these cases I have, and I have chosen Virta. So I assume many of you know its official name of the company is Liikenne Virta Oy. It is a global forerunner in the EV charging solutions, and it's one of the fastest growing companies in Europe at the moment, according to the Financial Times. They have 1,000 private and public companies as their customers, and 500,000 points where the charging stations using Virta software is located. I have a fantastic colleague in Sydney, Birgit Tegethoff, who has run this case, and she has prepared the slides which show actually I would say that this is nearly a complete circle. We normally don't probably do as much as we do, but this shows how much Business Finland can do to help you to get into these markets. And why should you use us? Of course, we've seen so many customer cases. Birgit has been in the consultancy 20 years. So we have seen the mistakes that easily gets done, and avoiding these mistakes is easy when you are using Business Finland services. So how this case started, Birgit had a market entry workshop where these various steps were done, and then there was a first visit. Then the company chose sales director, was convinced enough, and then we helped them up to the creating the sales pipeline. And I have 3 more slides here showing what were the key milestones. We started with this case in 2022, and it's still up and running to a certain extent. So this market entry workshop that was on the left in the previous slide, that's where we discuss with the client and make sure what are the priorities and what would be the sequence in the market entry. Then we helped the company in stakeholder mapping, sparring and challenging, and opening the networks we had in Australia in various states and cities around the country. And then after that first visit was set, a full week meetings with financiers, government, potential customers, and key trade events. And then, of course, I mentioned earlier that Australia is probably as Nordic as you can be outside the Nordic area, but still, of course, there are some intercultural differences that were discussed. And then Virta was ready to go on. So the next step, obviously, was hiring somebody to do the work in Australia. We don't have this kind of services, but we have a wide consultancy basis in various areas, including consultants in the HR services, which we're able to share with them. And of course, once everything was ready, we suggested one of the key industry events where to launch the concept and the company in the market. And in Australia, as in many countries in the world, government of Finland has appointed honorary consuls, and we were able to tap the networks that these honorary consuls were providing, and their business contacts and so on. So we were able to multiply our own contact network using the honorary consuls that are in many cases very distinct businessmen having deep contacts in their own countries. So the key messages on the left, it's really important to allocate the resources. And if you are seriously going into a country, think about how much you can invest for the first 3 years. And of course, this is now a case, this Virta case, that you are establishing your presence in the country. Of course, if you just want to sell and not yourself be present in the country, then the steps would not be as complete and as in this case. And continuing with these key messages, there are in Australia, as in many other countries, a lot of other Finnish companies, and it is important to partner with these Finnish companies, because in many cases they are chasing the same customers and projects as you would be, and of course Business Finland is happy to introduce you to the existing business communities in the locations we are. Many of you probably don't know that embassies abroad have PR and media, social media channels like in many countries, LinkedIn or Facebook and so on. And we are of course opening these channels for the companies, not to make your own advertisements, but whenever there is an event where you have been, or if you have done something that has general interest from the Finland point of view, these channels are available for you. And of course, industry events, they are very important. And if you have a very interesting business, as we assume you have, then try to get into the panel discussions to show your case in front of everybody in this industry events. Okay, I saw another case from this region, Nusantara, which is the new capital city that Indonesia is building in the middle of the island of Borneo. And there is another tool that is available from Business Finland, and this joint offering. Our team in Jakarta was able to create a very good relationship with the team that was in charge of planning and executing the new capital city in Indonesia, and to the extent that they chose Finland as their only country know-how partner. And what happened after we were chosen as a know-how partner? By the way, in the middle is an overall view of Nusantara. It's a 32 billion project. Once we were chosen as a know-how partner, I'm standing on the left with the regional manager of Helvar. In Nusantara, there is so-called Techno House, where all the partners are presented. And in the Finnish pavilion, you have several Finnish companies, most of the mid-sized companies that have solutions like Helvar to be used in Nusantara. In the neighboring rooms, you have small companies like Hyundai, Siemens, Cisco, IBM. So again, we managed to become a very important and visible partner, which opened the door then for the medium-sized Finnish companies for the projects that are now upcoming over, let's say, 10 years that this completion of this project will take. So we have been able to organize for these companies who have joined us in this project, joint presentations for the Indonesian construction companies, architects, workshops, and as I said, we are permanently visible in this showcase room in Nusantara. And on the right, our Minister Rydman is signing an official memorandum of understanding of the cooperation with the minister who is in charge of this capital city project. So this is one example. We have several of these mega projects around the world, and I encourage, of course, you to be in touch with us and see what are the other similar kind of projects abroad that you might be interested and willing to join the team. And the last slide from my side, don't miss this. This is a homepage, marketopportunities.fi, where we show various sales leads and business opportunities around the world. You see very general descriptions of this project, but there is always an advisor's name and contact details. You can search there by the country name, region name, or the sector name. So I hope you will talk with us, use Business Finland as a booster to get into this very exciting markets. And here I have put Birgit's contact details and my details. So hope to hear from you soon. Thank you.
Thank you, Pekka. That was super interesting overview of especially Australia. I never thought about it that it's one of the most Nordic countries outside the Nordics. That's a good way to put it.
Of course, there are a lot of immigrants there, and it has the population consists of people who have similar spirit probably than we have in this part of the world.
How easy is it to set up business in Australia compared to, for example, in the European countries?
Well, I think it's very much as easy as it is anywhere in the Western Europe. And once again, I mean, I didn't show here the process of doing that, but please be in touch with Birgit Tegethoff or Aku Valta, who are our advisors in Sydney, and they will tell you all the necessary details.
Very good, very good. What are the biggest mistakes you should avoid when thinking about the markets that you just described?
Well, it's I think one of the biggest markets is that you don't prepare well enough. So before you do anything, have a discussion with our advisors. Either here in Finland, we have very experienced people here, or contact us in the countries. And secondly, the most typical mistake that the Finnish company does is that there is not enough resources allocated. You know, this all is very attractive and rewarding, but it doesn't come free. So you have to have enough budgets, and also there, Business Finland is able to help you. We have several tools starting from the market research. We have a tool called Market Exploration, where we are paying actually 50% of the costs if you are using a consultant to open your business case in Southeast Asia, Australia, or anywhere in the world.
Okay, good. Hey, thanks a lot, Pekka, for your point of view. Any questions there? There's actually one comment regarding the language. Yes, we have now Finnish-speaking audience, but we are also having the recording, and this will be shared with the others. So that's one of the reasons. And we have some people who have been registered here, non-Finnish speaking. So there's a question about how is it with the geopolitics, especially in India is a no-no for space technologies. Any experiences on that side?
Yeah, geopolitics, of course, plays increasingly a big role, and that is one of the strongest reasons why, if you are in China, why you should have a look at this region. If we are looking at the other neighboring countries, our European neighbors, we are lagging behind in this China +1 diversification. So it really makes sense to have something in this region, and especially countries like Australia, Singapore. They are very like-minded and very safe choices in this respect. What comes to space in space industry and so on, there are now various restrictions, but that's something that our colleagues in the Ministry for Foreign Affairs is able to help you from the very beginning, whether your product is able to be marketed and sold in the country you have in your mind.
Okay, thanks. Any other questions from the audience? If not, we will. Oh yeah, what about the manufacturing capabilities? If we could specify a bit more, what do you mean by that, especially in some of the region or?
Yeah,
in the region.
The manufacturing capabilities, of course, are pretty good in all these countries that were on the slides, and there are especially Western companies at the moment are setting a lot of factories in Vietnam and in Malaysia. And also, of course, the governments are not sleeping there. And in all of these Southeast Asian countries are now huge infrastructure projects ongoing or on a planning table, meaning that there will be much better logistics opportunities going forward, better ports, better airports, better roads. The logistics chains are also improving at the moment. And in Malaysia, there is an island called Penang, which is already many years have been nicknamed as the Silicon Valley of the East. And there are huge investments from the companies like Intel, putting nearly $10 billion in Penang into their new factories opening there.
Okay. So it seems like a lot of opportunities.
Yes.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Please come and see.
Yeah. Yeah. Thanks a lot, Pekka. And next one we have Mr. Risto Korpi. He's an expert in PwC's accounting consulting services team. And besides that, he has over 15 years of experience in finance roles in both PwC and Uniqlo, and he has lived in Indonesia, Singapore, Japan, and Australia for 12 years. So a lot of experience on that one. And he has also been involved in establishing service centers in Malaysia and the Philippines. So we would like to welcome Risto. Thanks a lot for joining us this morning.
All right. Very good morning to everyone. Just one comment I saw in Pekka's slides that was mentioned that does Australia have the best coffee in the world? And based on my experience, it just might be. Just because the coffee, it might be worthwhile traveling to Melbourne. But anyway, let's get started. Give me just a sec. We don't often use the Zoom, so I'll try to get the slides showing very quickly. Give me just a few moments. And good. Should be all right now.
Yes.
Fantastic. All right. Very good. So
You still put it into the presentation mode, so.
I lived in actually my last year in Indonesia. Then I moved to Uniqlo, the Japanese clothing firm, and then kind of my rest of my time in APAC was with.
Risto, we are cutting you.
Uniqlo, and administration looked like economic drivers and hot topics. There might be a bit of a repetition with Pekka, where we try to avoid it, but I think important topics are worth repeating. Yes, business culture. So just for the sake of the presentation, so I have categorized the countries into the three buckets. So there's the emerging markets, which are countries in Southeast Asia, advanced economies, and then there's China and India separately. We don't touch them as much as the other countries. But the business culture, it's quite interesting. So especially the emerging markets, the way kind of the business is conducted, and especially the teamwork, it's people are very fun. And loving. There's a lot of often your colleagues are your best friends, whereas in Finland I was quite often used to that. There's kind of a colleagues and friends and family. Then people are very fun loving, but at the same time people are quite careful. People aim to avoid mistakes, and people are a bit afraid of making mistakes, and that partially makes the work a little bit slow sometimes. So I guess
sorry,
the good
Risto,
thing is, yeah.
Risto, can you put the presentation mode on? And seems like you're a bit of a lagging, so.
All right.
Can see.
Actually, on my screen the presentation mode is on.
Okay, but for us it's not, so probably
okay.
have double screens there.
Let me share again. So now I think you see the normal screen. I don't know if anything changed. Now I see the presentation screen.
But we don't. No.
You don't. Okay. So if we want, it seems a bit difficult. So if we want to see the presentation screen, should Taina simply share the slides?
Yes, we can do that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just a second.
Let's do it like that.
And just let me know which slide. So.
Yeah. Slide number 3, please.
Yes.
Same thing with Taina.
You can't see.
No.
Okay. Just a second. I think it. What about now?
Now, yes.
Yes.
Yes. I think it was the. Yes. Super.
All right. Fantastic. Yep. So what I was mentioning, I mean, people are quite careful in the emerging markets, and a lot of consideration goes into making decisions. Decisions are not made easily, which of course the good thing is that often the quality of decisions is fairly high. But on the other hand, sometimes decisions cannot really be made because people are too afraid of making mistakes. And also, I think compared to, let's say, Western markets, there's a bit more follow-through or monitoring needed. So when I was with Uniqlo in Singapore, we had a Malaysian finance director with our joint venture partner, and she said that, from her perspective, the difference between, let's say, Singapore and then Indonesia, Philippines, Malaysia is that when in Singapore you tell people to do something, first they grumble and disagree and say, no, I'm not going to do it. But in the end, they will do it. Whereas if you tell in Indonesia, Philippines, people to do something, they go, yes, sir, we'll get it done. And then in the end, you will notice that actually the job was not completed. So a bit of a more follow through and monitoring perhaps needed than in Western countries. Maybe one reason why advanced economies are advanced is that the speed is completely different. So a few years ago, it might be actually 10 years ago already, I was talking about, moving the work in Hong Kong, which finally I didn't do, but my wife is from Hong Kong actually. And when I had the discussions there, the people just mentioned that, when we consult, we need to make decisions very fast. Sometimes we don't have the full information, but we just need to decide and make the conclusions very fast. And I think that's one big difference, that the speed between the advanced economies and the emerging markets. Aim for a better future. This is interesting. It's I think it applies in a way to emerging markets, but at least in countries like Singapore and Hong Kong, the gap between the older generation and the younger generation, at least to me, it's huge. You can clearly see that the countries have developed so much within the last, let's say, 30 or 40 years. And with that speed of development, I really I would tend to agree that the future is Asian. But then if we look at the map, kind of the Singapore is a small country, advanced economy, and it's surrounded by these large emerging markets. And I think we'll hear a bit more about later, but Singapore is kind of the easy entry way to Asia. The regulations are straightforward. It's easy to understand what is needed to, let's say, move to Singapore or work there or set up the business. But then at the same time, probably a lot of the business opportunities, they lay outside of Singapore in the surrounding countries. And I used to know an Australian fellow who had a chain of chiropractic clinics in Indonesia. So first he actually set up the business in Singapore, but said that it was okay, but the costs were so high that it was difficult to really make good profit in Singapore. And then he moved to Jakarta and set up the chiropractic clinic there and said that initially it was perfect. There's a lot of people who have money in Indonesia, and the costs were low, so the profits were very high until they went. So then that's kind of the downside, that sometimes the regulations and the permit processes can be a bit confusing in Indonesia. And in this case, for example, and a few other industries, it's not fully clear what kind of permissions are needed for the business, and sometimes government kind of on purpose they tend to issue permits that might not exactly correlate the business, so that later on they can come back and kind of challenge the entrepreneurs. But I think the kind of the first lesson is that where there are risks, there might be rewards. Where there are limited risks, probably there are not that many rewards either. Yes, and yeah, and then what about Finland? It's we had a project in Malaysia, which, to be honest, I think it was not all that good. It was a bit chaotic week, and after the week, our team said, "Oh, thank you so much that we have never had so kind managers than you guys were." We wonder, really, is that the case? But I think a lot of Asians they like to work with people from Finland or people in Western countries, because we have a bit more humane approach than many of the locals or some of the locals. But then at the same time, the feedback that I heard and what I heard of some other Finns is that for Asian taste, sometimes we don't give enough detailed guidance. We might tell that why something should be done and expect people to go and figure out how to do it. But often people want to hear that, what should be done and how to do it. So there is one learning that I kind of had to a bit adjust also my coaching style during the years in Asia. All right, Taina, shall we move on? Yes. Again, I mean, the division, of course, everything is not straightforward. I might say emerging markets have weak institutions, but some countries and some institutions might be very mature and strong. But to generalize a bit, the institutions, let's say the authorities, tax offices, are not as mature in emerging markets than, let's say, Western countries or advanced economies. And kind of what we tended to say at Uniqlo was local is global and global is local. So kind of if we have or if you guys have, let's say, a service offering or product offering, and you have the sales processes. You might have your administrative processes, HR, accounting, etc. So of course it makes sense to duplicate your standard process and implement it in all the countries where you want to expand. That said, there of course will be few exceptions. I think mainly relating, especially tax regulations in Asia, and then HR regulations are very strict in Australia. And especially, taxes are something. I think HR in Australia, but taxes in other countries is something that I need to stress that they don't exactly work as they work in Finland. So first, when I moved to Indonesia, we had one client where the CFO was Australian. And then he came to ask me that, why does, when I was with PwC, why does your engagement lead always talk about VAT, Alvi? That isn't it that you sell something, you pay, you buy something, you claim, then you see what is the net, and either you pay the tax authorities or then you receive money back from them. And a few years later, after millions of dollars of write-offs, I think both me and the CFO fully understood that there are a lot of risks, even in areas like VAT, where there's not that much risk in Finland. Actually, the same company ended up having a income tax expense higher than taxable profit, which sounds impossible, but in Indonesia that was possible as well. Yep, but everything can be managed. It's just a matter of kind of adding the extra layer to protect the risks when you operate in these environments. Whereas in advanced economies, when I moved from Indonesia to Singapore, what I loved about the country was that suddenly everything was clear. You always knew what to do. The guidance, the rules, the instructions were always clear. And other thing that, the documentation, that suddenly anything that happened was well documented. Initially, I loved it, and I mean, it's all good. But of course, Singaporeans have also the habit of kind of a bit over documenting. Even when something happens, which, transaction for which there is no document, that they need to come up with something. At the level of digitalization, fairly, I mean, generally speaking, I was pretty impressed, especially, with Singapore and Australia. Japan is a country where I think there's still a lot of opportunities to further digitize and simplify the work. So 2017, I moved to Japan, and then I had to fill in some paperwork for the insurance documents. So it was handwritten, paper. The highlight was that I had to fill in my wife's age 8 times and date of birth 3 times. So I think pretty much it was probably clear to everyone that how old is she after that. So I think Japan is also it's making advancement in the level of digitalization, but probably there's some opportunities there still. Anyway, maybe to summarize, it's the concept of risk and fairness can be a bit different than what we are used to, and that's important to keep in mind. Yes, Taina, let's move on. Very good, thank you. I think there's a bit of a repetition to what Pekka mentioned already. So I'm not going to talk too much about this. Maybe the key points that at the moment India, is the fastest growing major market, driven by the public investments, and many countries are actually kind of switching the priorities from China to India at the moment. And when I talk with our German colleagues who are running the PwC international growth practice, at least their understanding was that India is getting better in terms of the the regulations and the ease of doing business. And of course, a lot of the big opportunities are in the emerging markets. Indonesia, Philippines. There's a lot of young people, a lot of consumers. People love to, spend and consume. So the market is getting bigger and bigger. But maybe let's go to the next slide, please. Yes. Few points from here. So these are from the PwC's CEO survey. And if you look at the left-hand side, so there are the risks that the global CEOs have in their mind, what worries them. And then on the bottom, there's what the APAC CEOs, what they worry about. A few differences, like cyber threats. In Asia, people worry a lot less about the cyber threats than globally. So why is that? Because the level of digitalization, or the threats are not recognized well, or the threats do not exist, or the companies are well prepared already for cyber threats. My take would be that number one, especially emerging markets have a lot to do in terms of digitalization and automation. And number two, come with that, there's a lot of opportunities for cyber security firms. Other thing, what was not mentioned in the global list, but had in the APAC CEOs list, was the availability of key skills. So that was something that worried the Asian CEOs. And people talk about the kind of the Asian tiger mummies who push their children very hard, and the schooling system is definitely different, especially in places like China, Singapore, Hong Kong. And I think people are willing also to spend more money in education, also kind of an extra schooling on top of the regular schools. And other thing, of course, emerging markets, that they're still lagging behind in terms of the skills. But then the advanced economies are getting older. So how to kind of replace the aging workforce? Japan population is 125 million, but it's forecasted to be 100 million within the next, I don't remember what is the 30 or 40 years, but still, it's with this kind of a rate, Japan's population is expected to decrease significantly, which of course the aging brings, I think, two questions or opportunities. So can the works be automated to replace the aging workforce? Or other one is that how to encourage migration between the countries. Other interesting kind of a statistic was about the climate change. So on the other hand, Philippines, Vietnam, Thailand, Myanmar, among the top 10 countries affected by the climate change. Sorry, the bullets the text is very small in the chart. But then on the other hand, if you look at the chart, so going from left to right, what is the natural hazard exposure score? So many of the Asian countries have very high exposure to natural disasters. On the other hand, from bottom to top, how prepared are the countries for the climate change? So clearly you see Japan is quite well prepared, but then we have China, India, Indonesia, which have high natural hazard exposure, but low level of preparedness in terms of the climate change. So clearly there's opportunities there, because climate change, you can see already, there's a lot of floods, typhoons, food security is being impacted, so a lot of opportunities on that field as well. Yes, Taina, one more slide. Very good. Hot topics. Yep. There's certain, of course, when businesses think that where should they head, there's certain hubs for different industries, like Thailand, clearly, automotive. Malaysia, I think there's something that especially Penang that Pekka mentioned already. Indonesia, heavy industries, factories, nickel for the electronic vehicle batteries. And Philippines, of course, is very strong base for the business process outsourcing. And like mentioned, emerging markets. So the private consumption is driving the growth, but sometimes firms need to tailor a bit the product offering. Like for example, Kraft or Cadbury, so they sell chocolates and snacks and cookies. So in Jakarta, they sold some of the cookies in the packaging of 2 cookies, whereas the same the product would be sold in, let's say, Finland in packaging of 20 or 30, just to make it affordable for the locals. I think what was mentioned, production is shifting these countries, especially, what was mentioned, Vietnam, Malaysia, Indonesia. Vietnam's unemployment rate is starting to be very low, so they might have issues with the capacity at some point, but still a lot of production moving there with the kind of the race to rebalance and the China +1 policies. Infrastructure. So I've been both in Indonesia and Philippines riding the taxi or the Uber, where the driver is looking from the phone the map the where to go, but the network was so poor that it keeps switching on and off, making it a bit difficult to fully utilize the kind of the apps or technology. Also, back in the days, over 10 years ago, I flew from Singapore to Jakarta. The flight was 1.5 hours, and then it took me 4 hours to take the taxi. To drive from Jakarta airport to my home in Jakarta. So there's a lot of focus on the networks, the roads. Jakarta, they have built the first phase of the MRT or the metro system. They are improving the roads. They are improving the high-speed railways within the island of Java. So a lot of activities in terms of the infrastructure. Otherwise, of course, education, gaming, playgrounds, everything is exciting. And then for aging populations in advanced economies, digital healthcare, how to replace the workforce. And also quite interesting that, I talked with my old boss in Japan, and he said that he feels that because he's in charge of the APAC region there, that he feels that, Asians have a lot more money now and time and information. So the demand for leisure activities and premium brands is increasing all the time. Yes, and I think China, India, we mentioned already. China, a bit of a challenging probably environment at the moment. So some of the focus is switching over to India. But if I'll very briefly summarize, so when I work with Uniqlo, pretty much our riskiest countries were also the countries with the highest operating profit margins. So risks and rewards, they kind of go hand in hand. That said, the risks in Asia are a little bit different than the risks we know. So it's good to engage with the local partners and the accounting firms to mitigate the risks. And in the end, I would say, if you go to Asia, have fun and let the people in Asia enjoy your products and services to improve their quality of life. Thank you.
Thank you. That was a good overview, especially on the cultural side. That was really good to learn a lot of new things, at least for me also. There was a question about New Zealand. So both Pekka and you never mentioned that one, and I feel that it should be even more Nordic than Australia, right?
Samppa, you are absolutely right, but unfortunately it is so much smaller than this big Nordic style country called Australia, and it's another 3 hours flight further to the east. So there are of course very similar opportunities in New Zealand as in Australia. Team Finland and Business Finland, we have a very limited resources to do anything in New Zealand, but we have an excellent honorary consul in Auckland. So any of you who is interested in New Zealand, I'm happy to put you in contact with this lady lawyer in Auckland.
Very
Yeah,
good. Very good.
I would say also that New Zealand, the opportunities are very similar in Australia. But at least with Uniqlo, we felt that if we first expand to different states in Australia, they are still bigger than New Zealand. Plus the logistics would have been again more challenging in New Zealand, but definitely similar opportunities exist there. It's just a bit smaller and a bit further away.
At least one of our members is for Boardman Grow, the Skipperi. I think they are existing in New Zealand, so I'm doing understood quite well.
Very good.
Hey, I had a question, Risto, to you regarding to Japan, and that has always been said it's one of the toughest markets to enter, especially from the Europe. Is that still true?
I believe so. I mean, in a way, the regulations are, I think, easing a bit, and the Japanese, I don't know if it's fair to say that they are becoming more open, also the foreign brands, but it depends a bit what you offer. So Japanese quite often they like something that is kind of a stylish or cute, and one brand that Japanese loved was Marimekko. That they absolutely love it. So if you go to kind of compete with something, I don't know, technology or something where Japan traditionally has been very strong, I think it's quite hard. Even I think Walt is doing pretty well there actually. But then like Nordic branding or styling, I think Japanese that goes down pretty well.
Okay. Good. Any other questions from the audience? If not, we will jump into our last part, and this part we will know not to have any presentations. We have more like a fireside chat, right? Good afternoon to Singapore, Antti. How is it there?
Hey, hi. Yeah, well, it's hot as every day the same weather.
Yeah. Hey, good to see you. Last but not least, so we will have a chat with my colleague Antti Toivonen. He's based in Singapore, and he's a creative entrepreneur and helping future-facing companies with custom dream teams with us in Superson. Our clients there include, for example, Google and Amazon and Unilever and more. And he's been about 20 years in the marketing and advertising, and including 14 years now in APAC region, especially in Singapore. He's really a business leader and award-winning creator. So good to have you here with us. And we thought with Antti that we will just to give you some war story. No, war story is a wrong word for this time of the world, but some stories about what's in the real life. How did we do it entering the totally new market? And I have to say, although Risto mentioned that Singapore is the easiest country to enter, I would argue a bit that. But let's see what we can offer. But I will first give some kind of an overview of the way and the strategy and the why we did the Singapore, and then I'll let Antti to tell more about it. How did we do it? So we decided to launch outside Finland first time, and I remember being one event it was actually a Korpi event where they were talking about the internationalization and taking the the first leap into a country. And the rule number one was that pick the closest market from you, and which means that Sweden, because that's always the easiest. And I was like, damn, that was like already the first step, and I already missed that one. But for our reason why we decided to go to Singapore, actually we had 5 different we have a kind of criteria. So we wanted to look for the market where we knew, for example, in our business, the freelance creative market is super important, and we wanted to find a market where the freelance market is big enough. The second was that there's a legislation that will support it, and the third one was more like that there's an international major players who are in the same field as we are. So we knew that there is actually a good market to exist. Then actually the fourth one for us was that we wanted to have that Finland is actually a benefit, not a burden. As a creative marketeers to go to Sweden, we still have a bit of a how would I say, not the image of being the greatest creatives in the world. So, but when we went to Singapore, that was immediately that the stamp in your forehead is immediately that you have sustainability, design, education, and all that thing. So very well done by Team Finland and the whole building the Finnish image there. And the last but not least, that we have our own contacts there, and that was one of the reasons we saw that okay, there's a lot of opportunities in that market. So that was for us the why. And how did we do it was one of the key points for us was that we decided to enter the market not with the client, but we decided to go there with our business model first. And our business model is a bit different from the other key players in the area, which we found out, and that was one of the key reasons why we were so successful in the beginning when we launched it. But one of the key things, of course, for opening a new market is actually to find a perfect match, to find a person who can start running the whole business there and to be a reliable person, but still know the market. And Antti, that's you here. Great to have you. So we've been with Antti now for 5 years, and it's been a great ride. But if you could give us just a short overview, how did we launch in Singapore? If we start from the beginning.
So hi, I'll just give a little super brief intro as well, just repeating the same things what Samppa said. But they are originally from Finland, but then moved to Singapore in 2009, working then in. So first, my background is in marketing, advertising, working as a creative director in a lot of these international network agencies. I have a lot of presence here, pretty much every significant so-called 4A agencies here. So I spent time with TBWA, Ogilvy, RGA, that sort of companies. Maybe at least one of them could be familiar to you. But so my first job in Singapore was I was the other half of the lead creative team on Singapore Airlines global account, which is like a prestigious account here. So that was a great way to get started. But then, as time progressed, just came this itch to start, working with a more entrepreneurial fashion. So I already forgot what Samppa asked, so maybe you can ask it in a bit. But I just wanted to address a couple of things that was mentioned. To Pekka's points, I like the slide that showed the size of these economies, and it shows like Singapore is a very large economy. Compared to the region. Of course, the growth rate is different. The more developing markets are growing faster, but it's good to notice as well that Singapore is something like 5.6 million people. It's even smaller than Finland as a market. And then you go on pretty much any condominium that is close enough to the shore in Singapore, you actually see Indonesia. It's so close, so you see it, and you can even see at the same time Indonesia and Malaysia. So it's they are like huge markets just right next to Singapore, and you take Indonesia, it's actually the 4th biggest population in the world. India, China, US, Indonesia, and this is something that a lot of people don't really realize until they hear it. I go like, oh boy, that's quite a big opportunity. And then just to that point about the tip that go to Sweden or go to the closest market, that seems to be to me like a very Finnish mindset. Actually, now having spent like 15 years overseas, and before that lived in London, it's a thing that only a Finn says, to be honest. So and that's why you see Finnish companies, they go to Sweden or they go to Estonia, and then they are international. You take even Sweden, that's like the market size is like a second or third tier Chinese city. It's really like quite a tiny thing. It might be convenient to do, but I think the bigger opportunities really lie a little bit further out. And I also wanted to address what Risto said about the business culture. Those observations are very accurate, and there's even words for it. And I think that was a nice breakdown that Risto you had about the more developing markets and then the more developed markets, and it really is. I can attest that is quite accurate what you said. And say we take Indonesia, they are very bad at saying no at things. There's even a word for it. It's called sungan, and it's like a cultural thing in a way. Like in Finland, we talk about sisu. In Indonesia, like one of those concepts is sunga, which means that you just don't want to hurt anyone's feelings, and you end up saying yes when you really want to say no. And so you just need to be very mindful of that sort of dynamics when you're operating here. But then again, Singapore at the heart of like even physically pretty much at the heart of Southeast Asia it's a different kind of a business environment. It's very almost like, just by looking at the facade, it's almost deceptively Western in a way that you might think that it works the same way as the things that you're familiar with work, and it works to a degree like that. But then actually there's this whole undercurrent that is very, very local, very Chinese actually, even though it's a multicultural country. Especially in the business world, it is largely run by Singaporean Chinese. Of course, a lot of Indian, a lot of Malay as well, and Westerners. But if you really look at where the power is even in the region, is often the Chinese heritage. But you don't need to speak any Chinese to do business in this region. I actually haven't met I've met like maybe in this 15 years, I've met maybe like 5 Westerners who speak Chinese, and they do. So it's not like a requirement. English is like how you get by, really. So that makes it easy. Yeah. But yeah, that was the first ramble. But Samppa, what was your question?
Yeah, the origin question was that how did we start it in Singapore? I think that's very good to hear from your mouth also to others, that what's the right way to open up and launch.
Yeah, I would say like some learnings there as well. Like it was my first time as an entrepreneur, so I thought that I know this business like the back of my hand, because I've been doing it pretty much all my career and 10 years in Singapore alone. So we introduced a completely new kind of a business model to the market. And one of the things that really worked well, and I think I would recommend this for everyone, like don't be quiet or shy about your entry. So we did like quite a lot of PR and quite a high profile launch, and it really helped our business at the beginning, because it felt like we came to the market with at least perceived unfair advantage, and enough to kind of like get interest from the press and interest from potential clients. So the phone started ringing, and that's something I've noticed now with the past 5 years. Every single time we do PR, we are in the press, the phone rings. So it's so that's sort of like a recognition that people know that you exist is super important, or at least like advisable. Then the other thing I realized and is, of course, we didn't have clients when we first started, but there was a network of people that had been building almost coincidentally just through my previous work in the past 10 years. So there was like a handful, like a pool of clients that we could start reaching out to. And as we did, we were very lucky to get the good projects from there, because I was just at the tail end of the very bull market before COVID. So we got business going, but later on realized, especially when the times got tough, how hard it is actually to just get yourself in front of people, because this is a very competed market, Singapore alone. So be ready to do a lot of lead gen, a lot of like just knocking on the doors, and we work in the service line. So in that sense, so this is not like a tech product that we are selling. It really comes down to who you know. This seems to be, and Asia in general is a very relationships-based business. So try to find someone who's to run your show, who's good at smooshing, just meeting people and likes to network and has a good network to start with. But that network will run dry at some point, so they need to be able to network even more. So it really comes down to who you know and who knows you. So quite like business 101, but I think it's accentuated in this region.
Yeah, and I think one of the other things I remember those times were also that we came quite bold. So we were not just a small Finnish company. We were playing with we were competing with the big boys then, like with the bigger companies there, and that was also, we were kind of immediately positioned in a way that we are not just a small European company.
Yeah, I think that sort of the facade of it was quite important, because we for sure looked bigger than we were when we first started, and it worked for our advantage as well. So we didn't go down the finish like, okay, let's be a little bit shy and sorry, thank you, sort of an approach, but we went loud. So
What about, you mentioned that the business model was different, but it would be interesting to hear from the others that how did we ended up knowing that we have a bit of a different than anybody else?
Yeah, I mean, of course, that we did an analysis of the market, and we knew what kind of companies were there, and it was very clear that everyone was, no matter were they like a network or boutique sort of agencies or consultancies, they pretty much all had the same business model that was inherited from the tail end of the Mad Men era, so to say, and we felt that there was a way to wire this business for 2020 and beyond. So that's kind of what we did. One thing that is actually noteworthy about Singapore as well is whereas in Finland there are a lot of companies are local market companies and service only the local market, and I would say even Superson was a local market company before we started expanding outside of it. I mean, so that there were some international projects, but it was still a bulk of the revenue came from Finnish market. But I think that's a mindset that you need to kind of abandon right away, especially if you come to a place like Singapore. Nobody does things for Singapore market. Of course, there are a lot of buyers here in a lot of industries, but majority of the work and the business is outside of Singapore. It's around this region, and so what a lot of companies, I'm sure you're aware of this, what they do, Singapore is a regional hub. So you come, set up your business here, set up your core operations here, but then and a lot of your buyers might be here, but actually the execution of the work might be in other markets, and either because the need is there or the workforce is there, because Singapore workforce as well is highly skilled, not competitive price-wise if you look at, say, Indonesia, Vietnam, Thailand. But then again, what the Risto said, there is this sort of a cultural difference again with it can be a bit of hit and miss with talent outside of Singapore. So you need more quality control there, and really it takes a bit more effort to find the good people who actually say no to you when you need to hear the no and all that. And they do exist, but it just takes a bit more time and patience, I would say.
Yeah. I remember first 6 months we did tons and tons of meetings with the clients and get a lot of this sounds good, but no decisions. But the moment we got the first deal, that was a really nice feeling. Hey, we always also want to hear some of the mistakes that were done or the things that you learned or some might say fuck ups, but what would you do differently if we would do it now?
Yeah, I think I would just go way harder on the lead gen and actually profile building, because business moves, the decision making is not as rapid as in Finland. And of course I should have known that when starting, because I didn't come straight from Finland, but I hadn't run like a business, I hadn't been at the business front of things. So my experience was more still from back in the day, where Finland has very flat hierarchies. People make decisions on the spot, and you don't need to go through like a big hierarchies. But in this part of the world, decision making in business takes a long time. So the lead times just tend to be quite long from the first contact to actually converting business. So you need quite a broad pipeline to have something moving, and so that's one. And there's actually a question about Joni just asked. He just sent it directly to me, but there is this idea of Asian hub servicing multiple Asian countries from one country still a valid idea? And I would say yes, it is. And I would also, or are the countries so different that you need to address them separately, historical problems, culture, etc. Also true. So I think one service hub, or at least this is what we are doing. So we have a Singapore hub, but we service Indonesia, Vietnam, Thailand, Philippines, from here, a bit of India, a bit of China. So we go where the projects are, but you're very right that they are. So Singapore brings certain credibility and maybe some sort of a permission to invoice as well, because people understand that certain quality comes with a certain price tag. We do face some a very stiff competition if we were to service only Indonesian client for Indonesian market. I think then by having a Singapore project management, you're already out of the competition. So if you want to do that, then you've got to have the local entity there. But then culture-wise, they are super different. You take those 4 countries I just mentioned first there, they all have different religions. Thailand, Vietnam, Indonesia, Philippines, they're vastly different to each other as cultures. So we always say that if something works in Vietnam, by virtue, it shouldn't work in Indonesia, and vice versa. So that's why we always bring in local experts from each of those markets, especially when we do multi-market projects.
Yeah, there's a good question from Mikko from Vapaus. How do these markets think of ownership versus leasing and renting? Vapaus is in essence is a leasing company, so it would be interesting if you have any knowledge or experience on it.
Leasing and renting, yeah, that's a good question. I haven't really thought about it that way. I mean, say these sort of ride sharing apps and all that is a lot of people use them way more, I would say, than in Europe. So this is not about leasing so much, but some company like Bolt would do very well here. Actually, I wouldn't say Bolt necessarily would do well here, because the local competition with local expertise from Gojek, from Grab, which are essentially the same, are probably way stronger, in how they run the business. But so people are very used to this idea of say ride hailing and all that, and it's just way more common than in Finland, where you still end up in media if as a member of parliament you end up taking a taxi too many times. So yeah, but I don't know. I didn't really answer the question now there. So ownership. So people want to own property; they don't want to rent. So that's I guess that's quite telling. Cars. There are some say in cars that you have car sharing companies. A few of those in Singapore I've seen. There's also like e-scooter. Well, e-scooters are now like banned, like probably gonna happen in Finland soon as well. So, but then what else? Bicycles they lease all the time or rent like through that sort of apps. So this sort of app-based, like I can get something for a fractional time. I think that is people are quite open for that.
Yeah, good. Hey, before we need to wrap up the things, but would be very good to hear your key points for the growth entrepreneurs who we have on the line also here. What are the who are thinking of launching into these markets? So what would you put down on your three key things?
I think one would be kind of like, what is your unfair advantage? Really, like kind of in our case, it was like a different business model. So I wouldn't recommend if you're just like an advertising marketing agency from Finland. I don't know, like it has the highest amount of agencies per capita in the world, this market, Singapore alone. So it's a highly competed market, and that applies to a lot of different businesses as well. One thing I wanted to actually, this has nothing to do with the point, but I wanted to mention, it showed like Singapore is like a big economy, but the economic drivers in Singapore are very different than in the surrounding area. So it comes from finance, shipping, that sort of trading mainly, whereas the surrounding markets can be like more like manufacturing and that sort of things. But yeah, the unfair advantage is one. Like what's your permission to play to start with? Patience, I would say, as a second one, because decision making can be slow, hierarchies can be complicated, and the competition can be quite stiff. So this is a very price conscious market as well, more so than Europe. Like you will get questioned a lot by the procurement and all that. So be ready to justify the price or then bring the price to the same level as anyone else. So that sort of patience is important. And then I would say, don't be quiet, like be bold, be loud, just, drum that you're here, whichever of the markets it is. And it might be a journey. We were lucky in our case, our first announcement worked out. Of course, people had already forgotten it like 6 months later, but at least it gave us a good start. But even if your first announcements don't really make a splash, then just pivot and try again, keep launching and just drumming. Try to just find any excuse to be out there, like visible, because otherwise people won't know you, won't care about you.
Yeah. Hey, thanks a lot, Antti. That was very helpful, hopefully for many of the growth entrepreneurs on the line here today. And if anything, contact Antti for more information what comes to the Singapore. So open for that. Before we close, I would like to a little bit also wrap up the discussion. I think we heard a good overview in only 90 minutes about a little bit more about the data, more about the kind of the statistics and so forth, but also the real life examples from the cultural perspective, and also from Antti for how to launch it in action into a new market. I just put the 5 points. I think that one of the important point is to understand that the APAC market is the most growing economy in the world. So that's like the number one. So everybody's thinking about where the growth is. I would say now we know the direction very well. One thing that was mentioned, the Australia and Singapore are a bit more Nordic. I would put Nordic into a bit of a like this, but more easier to launch. And there was a discussion also about the New Zealand, and I think it's a very good point by Jari Hortia, who mentioned also that the New Zealand is actually, although it's not that big market, but if everybody else is focusing in Australia, I think Finns has a lot of opportunities in New Zealand. As mentioned, the skipper is already there. I think the third point is that there's huge opportunities emerging markets, especially we saw the Indonesia growth, and I think thanks to Pekka, the Nusantara project example, it's amazing thing where there's a lot of growth opportunities especially for Finnish companies, but also India. We know that India will take over China by population soon, and that is growing a lot as a market. We saw the fourth point. We saw a lot of opportunities, especially in healthcare. We saw a lot of opportunities in digitalization and sustainability, which is still in the very low level understanding, and there's a lot of movement happening. We see that already in Singapore with our clients. The last but not least, although it's a big market, the risks are also higher than in a normal market, but also the rewards are much higher than in a typical Western market. So if I would go home with those 5 points, I would start thinking about it, how to expand even more in that region. By saying that, I would like to thank you all for this refreshing morning, and hope to see you in the Boardman Grow events also in the future. And if anything, thank you for, and we will actually share the materials with you. So thank you.